Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we are tracking storms across the western side of the U.S. today, but moving into central U.S. later on this week. Let's take a look at your weather headlines on this Tuesday afternoon. The hail risk is ramping up. So what we're seeing is a hail risk today in New Mexico, but a more widespread risk for larger hailstones tomorrow in places like Wyoming, Nebraska, and even South Dakota. This continues all the way into the weekend, where we have a stretch of severe weather just about every day this week. We have a chance for tornadoes, hail, and strong winds, and all hazards risk on board for Saturday. And if you take a look at the Atlantic, well, it's pretty quiet right now. Tropical Storm Lorenzo is fish friendly. There you go. Fish friendly. It's just a tropical storm. We call this a fish storm because it will most likely not make any impacts to land. However, we do have a lot of activity across the U.S. right now, so we can stay here in the U.S. We don't have to go out to the Atlantic to find that active weather. Let's take a look at what happened over the last 24 hours. We actually did have a verified forecast yesterday. Love when that happens, and it does happen quite often here. Take a look down in Arizona, where we had several severe thunderstorm warnings just outside of Phoenix yesterday, and even quarter-size hail reported just outside of Phoenix in Tempe, Arizona. Now what that was, I know, mostly small hail and some high wind in that area as well. They had a microburst in that area with some very, very strong winds. So we did see some active weather, but again, pretty isolated. Now today it's going to be very similar, but we're going to go across New Mexico today, again with that active weather, but again, pretty isolated. A little bit more widespread tomorrow across two different areas across the U.S., and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. We've got a nice low pressure system. You can see the circulation right there out on the East Coast. It's still bringing some strong winds to the East Coast, but it's a lot lighter than what we saw yesterday. Across the central portion of the U.S., we've got a few light showers out there, but for the most part, pretty dry. Nothing severe to talk about there. And then we had those very rare tornado threats, no warnings that I saw this morning down in Los Angeles. Now, just on the southern side of California, we saw some high winds and some flooding impacts this morning. A very, very early wake-up call to all of those in Los Angeles. However, I do think that severe risk is slowly starting to decrease as we continue to see this move just a little bit farther to the east. So we'll talk about all of that here in just a few minutes. Take a look at the setup that we have across the U.S. right now. We have that low pressure system you can see highlighted there, circled there, just on the west side of California, sitting off the coast there. We've got a high pressure system that's keeping us very warm across the southern portion of the U.S. So let's see that in play here. There's your high pressure system, there's your low. Now what this tells me as a meteorologist, anytime we get these very deep troughs, these dips in the jet stream across the western side of the U.S., if that could pivot just a little bit farther to the east, we have perfect conditions for severe weather. So we've got that lift as it moves over the mountains and across the central portion of the U.S. We're going to see some moisture moving back in here as well, and we're going to see some pretty decent active weather over the next few days. We like to call this maybe our second severe weather season, or our fall severe weather season. That happens usually at least once in the fall, maybe 2 or 3 times, where we have a stretch of active weather. Now let's talk about storms today, and then we'll get into storms for tomorrow, and then Thursday and Friday and Saturday as well. Let's go ahead, let's zoom down into New Mexico today. That is where we have that hail risk. They're highlighted there in your oranges and reds. Now, I know that we often say orange usually means golf ball size hail. However, where we have those lapse rates, those significant hail potential, isn't necessarily where we have storms today, right? So you need them to line up, storms and those red spots today. So what I'm going to say today is mostly pretty small hail. We're going to say quarter to maybe $half size hail here for the most part, very similar to yesterday. However, every now and then we could have very, very isolated larger hailstones up to the size of a ping pong ball. So it's not going to be every hailstone, but I think max hail size here could be up to ping pong ball size hail. So again, that's across New Mexico, where we could once again have some strong wind speeds as well, very similar to what we saw in Arizona yesterday. We could also have those strong 60, 65, maybe up to 70 mile per hour wind speeds. Again, for all of those highlighted there in blue across Las Cruces and Santa Fe. Moving off to the west now, we still have that high wind threat in play for Los Angeles today. But again, I still think as this system continues to move to the east, as this trough continues to move to the central portion of the U.S., this threat is going to go down. Your tornado forecast today still remains in Los Angeles as well. It's a level 1 tornado threat, very, very rare for this area of the country, but it's still in the forecast, so we still have to keep an eye on it. Alrighty, moving on, because I think a lot of people want to know about tomorrow. And hey, by the way, let us know where you're watching from today, because we'd love to tailor this forecast to where you're watching from. Are you watching from the West Coast, where you've got that strong low pressure system? Are you watching from the central portion of the U.S. where it's a little bit warmer today, 70s and 80s, warmer than what you would normally see for this time of the year? Well, things are about to change, because as this low pressure system continues to move to the east and the jet stream, this trough, continues to pivot across the U.S., we're going to see more active weather right in the center portion of the U.S. And I know that we need that rain, and I know a lot of you are saying, when is that next round of storms? Well, I think that the question we're going to be asking is, when are the next rounds of storms? Because what we see are several troughs moving through, not only this week, but also next week as well. We have another low pressure system coming through. So I think that we're going to be talking about active weather for several days, maybe even a few weeks here, okay? So we've got lots to talk about. Let's go ahead and move into tomorrow. We're looking at Tuesday into Wednesday now. Here we go into Wednesday. Fast forward into Wednesday. There we go. Okay, flash flood outlook for today. We've got a level 2 risk highlighted there in yellow. For tomorrow, we've got Colorado and New Mexico in that flash flood risk. Let's go ahead into Wednesday. There we go. We're going to take a look at the nationwide view first, and then we're going to go down into our 2 areas of concern tomorrow. So we've got that first area. You can see those storms are going to pop off around about 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time, and then we've got another area of concern down in southern Colorado and New Mexico. Actually, Denver missing out on the storm risk, not 1 but 2 days in a row. We've got a storm risk up to the north of Denver on Wednesday. We've got a storm risk out to the east of Denver on Thursday. Let's take a look at those storms first down in the southern side of Colorado. You can see that they're going to pop up in little lines here. So we've got some isolated, maybe discrete storms that are trying to form. You've got to watch out for those to be your wind makers. Other than that, we're going to see a flash flood threat, because you're going to see round after round of storms over the same place, just over and over and over. And any places that are abnormally dry for this time of the year, they're going to get that flash flood threat very, very quickly, because it's going to be very difficult for the soil to absorb all of that moisture. Moving on from a flood threat to now a hail threat. Now wait until you see the hail forecast for tomorrow, because it looks different than what we have seen over the last few days. Actually, over the last few days, we've struggled to even use that forecast because it's been such a low hail risk. Things start to change tomorrow as we head into the afternoon. What you're going to see are these isolated storms popping up right along I-80 here. So in the southern side of Wyoming and the western side of Nebraska, mainly in the afternoon hours. So remember, this is central time zone here. You're going to see these, there you go, isolated storms in this area. These are going to be the best chance for hail. Now we've actually got several models that are trying to stick a little hailer in this southeastern side of Wyoming. So we'll have to see if that actually verifies for tomorrow. But I've seen several models really favoring this area in particular for those larger hailstones. As we head into the late night hours, this is going to become more of a South Dakota and western Nebraska issue. As we continue into the overnight hours, you're going to see lots of rain in this area and some high wind as well. So let's break down the severe weather potential here. Let's first start with the southern side of this system. Again, we've got that wind potential down in New Mexico and southern Colorado, and then another wind threat up in South Dakota and western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming. So 60, 65, maybe very isolated 70 mile per hour wind speeds. Talking about hail now, most of your hail sizes tomorrow will once again be quarter to half dollar. Maybe as we get more information tomorrow, we can ramp this up to larger hailstones, but right now with the information that we're given, I do not think we could go that high yet. However, I'm confidently outlining that area highlighted in orange. For those larger hailstones, we're going to talk about up to maybe ping pong or golf ball size hail for this area highlighted in orange here. This does include Cheyenne. It's a low risk for Cheyenne. I think a few more of those storms will be to the east of Cheyenne. However, I'm still highlighting Cheyenne to be in the risk for those larger hailstones. We're talking golf ball, maybe ping pong ball size hail. Alrighty, moving on here, let's go ahead and talk about we just talked about a lot of storms, right? One down in New Mexico for today, another both in New Mexico and up in the northern plains for tomorrow. We're going to continue to track off to the east here, so we're talking about Kansas by Thursday. On Friday, now I'll be honest with you, the Storm Prediction Center has not issued a risk for storms yet on Friday. However, if I were to bet where they would issue that risk for, I would say anywhere from eastern Kansas to the western side of Missouri, southern Iowa. And I know that we have a lot of people from Iowa that often watch, so I did want to highlight that for you. Again, this is Friday. It's not a surefire thing. The Storm Prediction Center has not said anything about this yet, but this is where I would highlight that chance for storms on Friday. Now, what they have talked about, for several days now, they've been talking about this risk on Saturday, so this is a day 5 risk here. We're going pretty far out in the future. This is for eastern Oklahoma, all of Arkansas, most of Missouri, and southern Illinois, even portions of Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, all included in here. So again, this is Saturday. It's an all hazards risk. We're talking about tornado, high wind, and large hail, all possible on Saturday. So keep this on your radar. If you've got outdoor plans on Saturday, make sure you're keeping an eye on this storm system. Again, we're several days out, but we'll get more information over the next few days, so make sure that you're keeping up with your weather updates. As this continues to track to the east over the next few days and into early next week, what do we have next on our radar here? Or on our calendar? That next storm system. Okay, so that'll be on the west coast, so our attention turns back to the west, and we'll do this all over again next week. It's just day after day after day of storm risks. Now, before I get to your tropical forecast, do we have any weather questions out there right now? Hunter is watching from Denver. Thanks for watching us, Hunter. You're going to get some rain, I think, tomorrow. It's a low chance. I know it's a low chance for storms tomorrow. Most likely non-severe in Denver. And then we've got some from Orlando as well. Jason out in Orlando. Thanks for joining us today. Also, Orlando, severe clear from this system. This is a fish storm, so Lorenzo is going to stay out to sea. Here's the U.S. way over here, and here is Lorenzo that is not likely to impact any populated areas. Winds right now at 45 miles an hour, so a weaker storm today than what we saw yesterday. Moving to the northwest at 15 miles an hour, but about to take a turn back to the east over the next 24 hours. Not a very impressive storm there, but hey, it's our next named storm on the list. We have Lorenzo checked off now. Melissa is next. That is our, I think, 11th storm. Am I correct on that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th storm so far this year, which means that our hail trace forecast officially verified. We said back in January of 2025 that we would have about 12 to 17 named storms, and we have just hit that as Lorenzo was named a storm yesterday. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at where we're at in our season. How far? Wow, we're so far into the year. Okay, middle of October right here. As we head into the end of October, we often see less activity in the Atlantic, so less named storms. You know, that didn't really happen last year. We still had a lot of activity through October and November of last year, so you never know, your season could always extend into September. Now, I have a portion of the forecast today. We have our newest meteorologist, Michaela Smith, talking about fall foliage. So are you ready to see those leaves finally change? I know it may not feel like fall to some of us, but I do want to show you how the leaves are going to change over the next few months and what types of leaf colors you could see right now. All right, Michaela, what could we see at the door for your fall foliage?
I'm meteorologist Michaela Smith, and it is that time of year that we start to see those leaves changing colors. And if you've ever wondered to yourself, why do they actually change colors? We're going to break down the science behind that today. So one of the biggest reasons that leaves start to change colors is as we head into fall, those days start to get a little bit shorter and those nights start to get a lot longer. Now, why is that important? Trees have this chemical compound called chlorophyll. It's used in photosynthesis, and it's what's taking that sunlight and transforming it into sugar or food that can be used by the tree so that it continues to grow. So that's why it's really important in the spring and the summertime when we have the most amount of sunlight. That's when you get this green pigment that shines through very brightly on the trees because it's constantly going through photosynthesis. Once we start to go to fall though, when those days start to get a little bit shorter, we're not producing chlorophyll anymore because those trees are not really growing anymore. They're kind of getting ready to go into the winter time when they shed their leaves, and so chlorophyll no longer is being produced, and then other chemical compounds, pigments in the leaves that were always present, those yellows, those reds, those oranges, have always been present in the leaves, but once the chlorophyll stops being produced, you're actually able to see some of those other brilliant, vibrant colors. Now, some people may be wondering too, did this last summer impact our season, and if it's going to still be really nice for people who want to go see these beautiful leaves? Well, typically you want to have a pretty dry end to the summer, and then you want to have kind of warmer sunny days and then cool autumn nights. Those are the best ingredients to be combined to have beautiful, vibrant leaves. Well, we had a relatively mild end to the summer, especially the end of August and beginning of September for a lot of people across the United States. Then those temperatures did start to pick back up, and then a lot of us actually are dealing with drought conditions right now. So that is impacting some fall colors across the area. It's not going to completely take them away, but you may notice in some states that those fall leaves are starting to fall off a little bit maybe sooner than you would expect. And that's because with the drought, there's not as much moisture available in those trees. So even though they would hold their leaves typically a little bit longer, there's not enough water left, so those trees start to turn brown, those leaves and those branches start to fall off, and then they start to head more into the winter a little bit sooner than you would expect. Now, if you are someone that loves going and looking at fall colors, here is a current map as of today of where some of those vibrant colors are. Here in Oklahoma, you can clearly see behind me, we still have a lot of green, so we're just starting to see some of those colors. Usually it's late October into early November that areas to the south start to see more of our peak foliage here, but then areas to the north, and especially in the mountain regions like the Rockies, they're already at peak color or maybe even a little bit past peak in some of those higher elevations. So make sure if you're in one of those areas and you haven't had a chance just yet to see some of those leaves, they're getting out there sooner rather than later before those changes really start to set in.
Michaela, thank you for that. Yes, and as she mentioned there, you know, we want those cool fall-like nights and then warmer days. I mean, doesn't that sound nice? Not only for the changing of the leaves, but also for just getting outside. I think that sounds really nice. Well, if you're looking for those cooler days, unfortunately, it does look like temperatures are going to warm back up. Yes, we're talking about back up. We're on this roller coaster of temperatures that we've been on here lately. We're going to be a little bit above average across the central portion of the U.S. as we head into the middle of the work week. However, remember that trough that I talked about earlier that's bringing that low pressure system to the center and eastern portion of the U.S.? That's going to help us to cool down. So we are once again in this roller coaster of up and down for our temperatures. Let's go ahead and take a look at some numbers here. As we head into the rest of this week, we're talking about the 80s and maybe even 90s down in the southern portion of the U.S. We've got a very chilly and crisp 40s and 50s out to the west. How much will we cool down as we head into the end of this week? 60s, 70s, still getting in the 80s by Friday for places like Kansas City and St. Louis and Memphis. How long will this last? Well, we're looking to October 23rd at this point. Yes, it looks like temperatures are likely to be above average as we head into the end of this month. Temperatures are likely to stay warmer than normal. But I have some good news for all of you fall lovers out there. As we continue to see these troughs come across the U.S., it's not just going to be warm days. They may trend a little bit above average for this time of the year, but it'll be cooler and then warmer and then cooler and warmer. So we will start to mix in a few cooler days in here. We're also going to start to mix in some moisture across the U.S. as well. What we're going to see from these troughs that just continue to move across the U.S. is more active wet weather. So that's also good for the changing of the seasons. get that last little bit of rain before we hit our winter season. All right, so thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox. That was your full forecast. We are here every single weekday at noon talking about not only severe weather, but also what's happening across the U.S. Follow us in the meantime on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, or give us a call if you're interested in any hail, wind, or tornado maps. Our meteorologists are tracking those around the clock. So that storm that hit near Phoenix yesterday, we've got that map. Any storms that hit today, tomorrow, no matter what time of day, we'll have it mapped for you. Give us a call at 855-334-4245 or email us at info@hailtrace.com or head over to our website, hailtrace.com, for more information. Thanks for joining us.